Amidst a crowd of hundreds, my son declared he had bought me an apartment in Montmartre and provided me with €10,000 a month. Yet, that very night, I ate dry bread in my leaky attic. My name is Ilara. I am in my early 70s. In my heart, I have always been an artist, but life forced me to set aside my brushes long ago. Now, people only see an old woman sitting in a dilapidated attic in the 18th arrondissement. The roof still leaks every time it rains in Paris, and I still have to place a bucket in the corner of the room to catch the drips. At night, the steady patter of falling water becomes the soundtrack to my solitude. The hands that once dreamed of painting masterpieces now meticulously restore old books and torn paintings for an antique shop. The smell of turpentine and glue has become ingrained in me. It is not the scent of passion, it is merely the scent of existence. But I have never complained, because I do not live for myself. I live for Adrian, my son. He is the sole reason I carry on, the only masterpiece I have ever created. And he has become a star, a successful, elegant real estate magnate who has entered the high society I never dared to touch. He married Isabel, a lady born into silk and luxury, belonging to a prestigious family. Every time I look at his success, I tell myself, all my sacrifices were worth it. I gave up everything for his present. At least, I used to believe that, before I discovered the magnificent lie he had built upon my very sacrifices. I believed in that play until the night of the gala at the Rodin Museum, the night I uncovered the splendid lie my son had constructed from my sacrifices. But the truth is not always easy to swallow. A sweet lie I used to lull myself with. He is busy. He loves me in a different way. I lived by that blind faith until that night at the Rodin Museum. The invitation arrived a week prior. Adrian called, his voice as eager as if preparing for a great triumph. "Mother, next week my company is hosting a charity gala at the Rodin Museum. I will be speaking. You absolutely must come. I want to introduce you to everyone." I hesitated. I had never set foot in such places, but his insistence made it impossible to refuse. A week later, I rummaged through my wardrobe. In the end, I only had an old, worn black dress which I spent hours mending to make presentable. I thought that would suffice. But upon entering Rodin, I immediately understood the immense distance between him and me. Sparkling couture gowns, dazzling diamonds, champagne glasses worth a month of my food expenses. And I, an old woman in a shabby dress, huddled in a corner, trying to hide my feeling of displacement. Then came the main moment of the evening. Adrian, in a perfect tuxedo, stepped onto the stage. He began to speak of success, of dreams, of the future. His voice was fluid, confident, just like a star born to shine. I watched him, both proud and choked with emotion. My son was truly in another world, a world I could only observe from the outside. And finally, Adrian smiled, his eyes directed towards me. "I want to give a special thank you to one person. The person who sacrificed her entire life for me to be here today, my mother, Ilara." The entire hall turned. I froze. "So that she can enjoy her old age and pursue her artistic passion," he continued, "I have bought her a small apartment in Montmartre, with a balcony overlooking the Sacré-Cœur. And every month I will provide her with €10,000, so she no longer has to worry about anything." Applause thundered. Camera flashes flickered wildly. People laughed, raised their glasses, whispering admiration. A beautiful story. A perfect picture of a successful son grateful to his elderly mother. But my ears buzzed. I heard nothing else. An apartment in Montmartre? Des. €000 a month? I stood motionless. In my mind, only the image of the leaky bucket in my 18th arrondissement attic, where I had lived for decades, appeared. My hands, calloused from the smell of glue and turpentine. The long, cold nights in that damp room. Meanwhile, my son amidst dazzling lights, wine, and accolades. I turned to Isabel. She was not applauding. She merely raised her glass, her eyes meeting mine. A cold, smug gaze. She knew. She knew it was all a lie woven in front of everyone. And she knew that in this moment, among hundreds of admiring eyes, I would never have the strength to expose my son. I do not remember how I left the party. I only know that as I walked alone back to my attic, The applause and praises still echoed in my head, now sounding like mockery. The door to my room opened. The contrast choked my chest. There was no balcony overlooking the Sacré-Cœur, only a tiny bare window facing the stained brick wall of the opposite building. There were no 10,000 euros provided monthly, only a red electricity bill lying forlornly on the rickety wooden table. My dinner was just a piece of dry bread left over from yesterday. I sat on my creaky bed, and tears welled up. But this time, it was not from hunger or loneliness. I cried for a more brutal truth. My son had turned my entire life of sacrifice into a cheap performance. In his eyes, I was no longer a mother. I was merely a gleaming prop on his stage. I looked around my cramped attic, where old drawings were covered in mouldy dust, where for so many years I had told myself that sacrifice was worth it. And then anger flared. It was burning hot, consuming my pain. I knew I could not sit still any longer. His play had reached its dramatic peak before those hundreds of people. Now it was my turn, and I would write my own ending. The anger brought me an unusual clarity. The next morning, I no longer cried. I began to act. My first step was to find evidence, starting with the simplest thing, my own bank account. I went to the bank and requested a detailed statement. Just as I thought, not a single 10,000 euro transfer had been made. Only meagre, irregular income from the antique shop. The lie was confirmed. I should have picked up the phone and called him immediately. I should have screamed at him, "Why did you lie like that? Why did you turn me into a joke?" But I did not, because I knew the answer I would receive. He would say it was just a bank error. He would promise to check again. He would continue to lie, with that sweet, false voice, and I would soften again. No, this time would be different. I would not give him another chance to lie. Instead, a larger, more frightening question arose in my mind. Why would he lie so publicly and magnificently? If he only wanted to improve his image, he could have uttered trite thank yous. Why invent a specific number, a specific address? What was he trying to hide? To whom was he really sending those 10,000 euros? I knew the answer was not in this attic. It was in their villa. I needed a reason to go there, a reason that would not arouse suspicion. And I thought of one. I called Adrian. "Adrian, it is Mother," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "I have a surprise for you. Do you remember that old oil painting of the pirate ship you loved as a child? I just finished restoring it. I want to bring it to you personally." There was a pause on the other end. Perhaps he was a little surprised. "Oh, really, Mother? I remember it. So, why do not you come over this afternoon?" The trap was set. I was not coming to deliver a memento. I was coming to find a truth. That afternoon, I hugged the carefully wrapped painting and took the subway to their upscale neighborhood. Adrian opened the door, a slightly awkward expression on his face. "Come in, Mother," he said. "Isabel is not home. She is meeting with clients." I handed him the painting. He unwrapped it, and for a moment, I saw a genuine sparkle in his eyes, a real glimmer of childhood memory. "It is beautiful, Mother. Thank you." Just then, his phone rang. "Make yourself at home, Mother," he said. "I have to take this call. It is business." He hurried into the living room, his voice becoming formal and distant. This was my chance. While he was busy, I did not go into the living room. I slipped into his study, the door ajar. I knew I did not have much time. My heart pounded. I was not looking for checkbooks or bank statements. I knew his world now resided entirely on his laptop. The laptop was open, and on the screen was a folder of electronic payments. I quickly pulled out my phone and took screenshots, line by line. Invoices, investments, and then I saw it. A recurring transfer, exactly 10,000 euros a month. But the recipient was not me, nor was it Isabel. The recipient was a completely unfamiliar name. Céline Dubois. Address: an apartment in the city of Lyon. I stood there, staring at the name. Céline Dubois. My heart hammered in my chest. At first I had thought perhaps Isabel had embezzled the money. But no, this was another secret. An even bigger secret. A secret they were both hiding. 10,000 euros a month, regularly, to a stranger in Lyon. Who was she? Leaving Adrian's villa, I did not go home immediately. I went straight to the small apartment of Genevieve, my dearest old friend. She was once a master librarian, someone with unparalleled ability to find information. I showed her the picture I had taken. Genevieve, I need your help, I said. Please find out who this woman named Céline Dubois is. We sat together, in front of her old computer. Genevieve began to search. There was not much information. But then she found a social media profile. The profile was set to private, but there was a public profile picture. Here it is, Alara, Genevieve said, pointing to the screen. The photo showed a young, beautiful woman, Céline Dubois. She was smiling, and in her arms was a boy of about 5 years old. And then I looked at the boy. The eyes, bright blue eyes, and the smile, that smile, the way the corners of his mouth tilted up, exactly like Adrian when he was little. My heart seemed to stop. All the air in my lungs seemed to be drawn out. Genevieve looked at me, her face full of concern. Elara, are you all right? I did not answer. I just stared at the child's face. A child with my son's eyes. A child whose existence I had never known. And then, everything shattered. The €10,000 lie. It was not meant to deceive me. It was not meant to polish his image. It was a cover. A perfect cover to hide a much bigger secret. Adrian did not just have one life. He had two. And he was using money, using my sacrifices, to support his ex-lover and their illegitimate child. I had a grandson, and my son had hidden him from me for 5 years. After that shock, I did not call a lawyer. This was not a matter to be resolved by law. This was a matter of the heart. The next morning, I took the earliest train to Lyon. I went to the address listed in the records. It was an upscale apartment complex, next to a beautiful park. I did not ring the doorbell. I just sat on a park bench opposite and waited. I waited for a very long time. And then, I saw him. Adrian, my son. He emerged from the building, not in his usual business suit, but in a simple sweater. Walking beside him, holding his hand tightly, was the boy with the bright blue eyes. They went into the park. Adrian bought the boy ice cream. He pushed the boy on the swing. He played with the boy on the grass. I sat there, from afar, observing. I saw a completely different Adrian, a gentle, patient father. Watching that scene, the anger in me dissipated, leaving only a deep sadness. Sadness for a family that could have existed, but was buried by lies. Finally, I stood up. I walked towards them. Adrian was smiling, but when he looked up and saw me, the smile vanished. His face went as white as a sheet of paper. He stood motionless, unable to utter a single word. I did not cry. I did not scream. I just slowed down, knelt down to eye level with the child who was looking at me in confusion. I looked into his bright blue eyes, my son's eyes, and asked a single question. What is his name, Adrian? My question seemed to break down all of Adrian's defenses. He collapsed onto a nearby bench, burying his face in his hands, and began to sob uncontrollably. The boy, seeing his father like that, also began to whimper. His name is Leo, Adrian whispered through his hands, his voice broken. That evening, at a small cafe, Adrian told me everything through tears of remorse. Céline was his first love, from university, even before he met Isabelle. They were deeply in love. But then he met Isabelle, the daughter of a prestigious family, a ticket into the high society he had always longed for. He chose status over love and broke up with Céline. But he did not know that, at the time, Céline was carrying his child. A few years later, when the baby, Leo, had grown, Céline found him again, not to cause trouble, but simply for her son to know his father. I was so scared, mother, Adrian said, tears welling up in his eyes. I knew Isabelle's family would never accept an illegitimate child. They valued family honor above anything else. An heir with a stain like Leo would ruin everything I had tried to build. Therefore, to secure that prestigious marriage, to maintain his position, he had to hide his past. He supported Céline and Leo, demanding that they live a quiet life. The €10,000 a month was to provide them with a comfortable life, and also to buy that silence, and the lie at the gala. I did not know what else to do, mother, he confessed. Isabelle started to suspect the large expenses. I had to invent a story. And lying about providing for you was the most plausible, most touching story. I selfishly thought that you would never expose me, that you would forever remain silent out of love for me. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. I am sorry, mother. I am truly sorry. I sat there, listening to my son's confession, a story of weakness, selfishness, and wrong choices. Our conversation was interrupted by the appearance of someone I least expected, Isabel. She stood at the cafe door, in her expensive business attire, her hair neatly tied back. She had undoubtedly hired a private detective to follow Adrian. Her gaze did not meet mine, nor Adrian's. Her eyes were fixed on Celine and Leo, who were sitting at another table nearby, with a terrifying coldness. When she approached our table, her reaction was not the jealousy of a betrayed wife. There were no tears, no screaming, only the cruel coldness of a businesswoman, seeing the biggest investment of her life threatened. "Adrian," she said, her voice even, devoid of emotion, "do you know what you have done? You are gambling with the honor of the Beaumont family." She turned to me. "And you," she said, "what do you think you are doing? Trying to be a hero?" Before I could answer, she walked straight to Celine's table. "Miss Dubois," she said condescendingly, "I think you know the agreement well, don't you? If this secret gets out—" She paused, looking down at little Leo. "I will use all the power of my family to ensure that you lose custody of your child. I will ensure that you will never find a job in France again." Then she turned back to Adrian. "And you, my dear, you will be ruined. My family will withdraw all capital from your company. You will be left with nothing." I was stunned. This was not a jealous wife. This was a cold-blooded monster. The real danger was not Adrian's lie. The real danger was the woman he had chosen to marry. Seeing the fear in Celine's eyes and Adrian's helplessness, I knew my goal had changed. This was no longer about seeking justice for myself. This was about protecting my precious grandson from the clutches of this monster. The next day, I arranged a private meeting. Only 3 people, me, Adrian, and Isabel, in a private meeting room in a hotel. When they arrived, Isabel sat down with the confidence of someone holding all the cards. Adrian sat beside her, looking like a shadow. I did not say much. I just placed the evidence I had on the table. My bank statement, showing that not a single euro had been transferred. The screenshot of Adrian's computer, showing the 10,000 euro transfer to Celine. And finally, an audio recording. "What is this?" Isabel asked, frowning. "This is an audio recording of my son's speech at the gala at Rodin," I said, my voice calm. "A very touching speech. I am sure the newspapers will love it." I did not threaten to sue them for fraud. I knew that would only hurt Adrian more. Instead, I looked Isabel directly in the eyes. "You can ruin Adrian if you want," I said, my voice cold. "You can withdraw capital, you can make him bankrupt. That is between the 2 of you." I paused, then continued word by word. "But if you touch even a single hair on that boy Leo's head, if you try to take away Celine's custody, then I promise you, the next morning, this entire dossier, along with the moving story of the lie at the gala, will be on the front page of the biggest newspaper in Paris." I leaned forward. "Just imagine, the Beaumont heiress and the ridiculous charity farce. The family honor you have always tried to preserve will become a laughingstock across Europe." It was a threat Isabel understood. I did not use the law. I used her own weapon, honor and image. I had turned her greatest strength into her fatal weakness. Her confident expression crumbled. For the first time I saw fear in those cold eyes. The tables had turned. Isabel had no other choice. She was forced to accept a tacit agreement. Their marriage continued, but it was no longer a marriage. It had become a cold contract, an arrangement to maintain appearances. Adrian still had to live in his wife's shadow, still had to play the perfect husband. But in return, he could secretly visit his son without threat. As for me, I did not receive 10,000 euros a month. I also did not move to a charming apartment in Montmartre. I still live in my attic, where the roof still leaks every time it rains in Paris. I still continue my work of mending other people's pasts to earn a living. Outwardly, nothing has changed. But in reality, everything has changed. Because every weekend, A little boy with bright blue eyes named Leo comes to my attic, not to learn to restore old things, but to learn to paint. My cramped attic is now filled with his clear laughter. The old smell of turpentine and glue has been replaced by the scent of fresh oil paint. The sunlight shining through the window no longer seems cold. It dances on the colourful paintings we have created together. I did not get back money or fame. I got back something infinitely more precious. A family. A real family. Built on love and shared secrets. And in the silence of that attic, I won.